This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Oh, what's going on?
Dilemmas, bro. I'm really kind of frustrated here, and I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated for my African American brothers out there. I really am. Do we always have to pick a brother to have to sit opposite of Skip Bayless? Why are we doing this? This is torture of human beings. Can we just pick an AI or something? No human being should be across from that guy. Richard Sherman. I think Richard Sherman might kick his ass one day.
I think they like the former player.
I get it, but
mixed with Skip. Richard, I think Richard once said that my life is worth more than you, or something like that, to Skip Bayless, or something of that ilk. I got to figure out the exact quote. I don't know if you can pull it up, but that's the one thing I think about when I think about Richard Sherman and Skip Bayless. They got to figure out what they're going to do. I mean,
I'm not a fan of that guy, bro. I'm just not.
Sharp, who you talking about, Richard Sherman?
No, dude, no. I'm a fan of Skip Bayless, bro. Please,
gotcha.
Skip Bayless. I'm not a fan. You can't just slam LeBron for everything he does. That's so ignorant and hateful, and just and I explain, you're young, so you didn't live it like I did. He spent a chapter in a book just to an exercise. Is Troy Aikman gay?
What?
You don't know about this?
No, I missed
this. He wrote a book. Yeah, again, you're young. This is 25, 30 years ago. So he wrote a book, and in the book, he just explored it. He said, "Oh, it was a rumor," and in the book, he writes about how he goes around Cowboys camp and the stadium and asking different people, "Have you seen him with a woman? This, that, whatever." And back in those days, okay, not that it should ever be an indictment who you want to love, who you want to be with. Hey, man, whatever makes you happy, God bless you, dude. Enjoy yourselves. But in those days, brother, it was like it's like an indictment almost. It's so homophobic in those days, and especially the sport is incredibly homophobic. It's still homophobic, but in those days, can you imagine? And so, for fun, in his book, he just explored it. And then this is why the words are dangerous, because when you spread lies, then they have a life of their own. And for the next decade, you would have guys talk about Troy's sexuality. And it was like, yo, dude, did you read the book? It was never true. He never found out any evidence, but he did it for, to raise the level of his book and his name and all that, because that's what he was doing in those days. He was building up his name. And just for fun, he had with Troy Aikman to do that. Think about how low of a person you have to be to do something like that. So I've never been a fan of that guy for decades.
I got
is you. What I'm, so to me, it just, you could tell he makes it personal. Like, trying to think of who's a real shtick guy that I don't think believes everything he does. Cowherd. I don't think Colin Cowherd is a guy that believes everything he says. I think he does a lot of stuff for shtick. You know what I mean? That he goes against the grain for certain things, but it's not a personal thing. He comes up with his, whatever, the way he does things. But I think some people make it personal, and that's what bothers me about that guy. You know what I'm saying? And then it's always you twist the show always with, I'd like variety. You know what I'm saying? Because it kind of, I don't like the signal it sends. Put it that way.
So I found the quote. Richard Sherman said, "In my 24 years of life, I'm better at life than you," which is somehow even more impactful than what
even in his worst moment, hitting that door with his wife. I'll take Richard Sherman every day of the week and twice on Sundays over Skip Bayless.
Yeah,
yes,
man,
what are you going to say, Sean?
No, and also I got another thing that he said during the show. He says, "Skip referred to me as an all-pro from Stanford. Some accomplishments you can never aspire. You will never accomplish anything."
Talk about personal, but also had some.
But they see it. Right? But Cam, they see it. they see what I see. That's all it is. I think a lot of the people that are watching right now or downloading the show later on or whatever, I think they see the same thing I see with Skip, that it's personal. You know what I mean? It just, I don't know, man. It just, I wish he went away. I really did. Now, I don't even watch the show, but I just hate that we've given him this kind of a platform and he's abused it in every possible wrong way he could possibly abuse it.
Got you. I
That's
hear you,
just,
man. I hear you.
that's where I'm just not a fan of it. All right, Josh Jacobs. It's
Mhm.
getting ugly for him. Obviously, Saquon Barkley. We're coming up to the imaginary deadline that we have on Monday to get a deal done, and I don't think either one's going to have a long-term deal because nobody's signing running backs to long-term deals
Right.
anymore. It's just it just doesn't happen. Even and Saquon would be that guy that
Mhm.
you would sign because his character and his talent is sick, but because of the injury history, I kind of get that why that's not happening there. So, how much does that affect what Dalvin Cook is doing? Because Dalvin, he has to understand now he's going to be living year by year, maybe a 2-year deal at best. There are no more long-term deals in his future.
Yeah, the running back market is non-existent, right? Like I think you look at a situation where teams have decided that they're going year to year with running backs that are making, that are veterans, are making more than $5 million. It does not seem like there's given a lot of long-term security. Miles Sanders, I think, got the biggest free agent contract this offseason, and it was essentially like a 2 for 14 deal. And so, you look at Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is one of the best 7 or 8 running backs in the league. But right now, he hasn't been, he's on the market, and nobody is lined up to give him the double-digit $1 million a year right now that he desires. You look at the two guys you mentioned, Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley. I was on Good Morning Football earlier today talking about the value of it. Josh Jacobs and Dalvin Cook are both in the top 3 of offensive share. And when I say offensive share, I mean the amount of touches and yards they have compared to the rest of their team. They're all over 40%. So 40% of the yards and touches that not Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley got last season were what the team got in total. So
Yeah.
if somebody's worth 40% of your team, you think you could take care of them to be able to lock them in long term. But the reality is, as much as I don't like it, as much as running backs don't like it, the market tells you what you're worth. And the
Right.
market has told them that they are not worth investing multi-year deals for double-digit $1 million. They just don't think it's worth it. They think that they're replaceable positions. Saquon and Josh Jacobs are certainly negotiating, but would it shock me if they start the season on the franchise tag and have to play it out and then go to next offseason and get tagged again? No, because that's the way teams have treated running backs. And unfortunately for them, I don't know that there's a path to see how that changes. It's a supply and demand thing. If we run out of running backs, maybe then they'll get their value back. But right now, there's still plenty of running backs, and there's not enough value for them to get the contracts that they feel they deserve.
When we hear about the competition for that third wide receiver, how do you view it? Because it's interesting how people will think it's Berrios, then people will think now that Chosen is here, he'll be the guy. So how do you view how they're going to use the third? Will it be a guy or will it be committee? Because I kind of get the feel I'm the committee guy.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
you'll see a lot
McDaniel,
of them. It's going to depend on situation, right? So
right,
the thing that
right.
people
You see the
forget,
same thing.
the thing
Okay.
that people forget, you have number 1 and number 2 receiver in Tyreek and Jalen Waddle.
Right.
Both of those guys can play slot receiver. And so a lot of it's based on how you're using Tyreek and Jalen. Are one of them going to be in the slot at all times? Or are you playing them outside? If you're playing Tyreek and Jalen both outside, well, then you need a true slot receiver, which is probably more of a Braxton Berrios. If you need a situation where you're playing them outside, but you need a big wide receiver inside, well, that's probably Cedric Wilson. If you need a situation where you're bringing one of them inside, Jalen or Tyreek playing in the slot, then you could put Chosen on the outside and he's the third receiver, but playing outside receiver. He's more of an outside receiver than a slot. And so your third receiver changes based on how you use your number one or your number two receiver. And so that's why I think you'll see all three of them. I think most people who don't follow the Dolphins would be surprised that Chosen actually was the most productive of the three in minicamp and all season so far. I've told you guys that, Dolphins fans, so you guys know that. You guys know your football.
He's looked good, man.
But he has been really good. And so the expectation probably going into camp was, okay, Braxton and Cedric and Ezukama are going to fight for 3, 4, 5, and Chosen may or may not make the team. Now, as long as he does the work that he showed in the offseason, I think not only does Chosen make the team, but I think he has a significant role. And Braxton's still going to have a role as your punt returner, but maybe he does a little bit less as the true slot receiver. And maybe it's just kind of in what I mentioned, in those situations where you want to run Tyreek and Waddle outside. And then Cedric's probably on the roster because of his contract, but I don't know that there's a huge guarantee that his role is going to be bigger than it was last year.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see a steady mix of them. But I will say I do think that that third receiver, whether it's Chosen, whether it's Braxton, Cedric, Ezukama, is going to get more work because I think you see the tight end position used less as a receiver. I think you see it more as the multi-position spot that it's typically in, and you see blocking. Because one thing we haven't talked about a lot for that position, they lost a lot of blocking because they had Mike Gesicki on the field. And the reality of the situation is a lot of their struggles in the run game came because they didn't have a tight end that could block in certain situations. And so there's probably some discouragement of Mike McDaniel when you run on first down behind Mike Gesicki and you lose 2 yards and you're 2nd and 12. And so now we're not going to run the ball for 5 straight plays. And so we talk about the effectiveness versus the frequency. Well, yes, Mike McDaniel has to run more, but I also don't blame him if I see my running back run into the back of Mike Gesicki on first down, then why am I going to run again on second down? And so personnel changes helps that, but it also probably decreases the amount that you feel like you throw to the tight end, which means that third receiver is on the field more and ideally gets more touches.
I'm looking forward to it, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for camp to come. Probably be the hottest camp we've ever had, by the way. Okay.
Don't remind me. I am my last few hours in New York before I head back. And one thing that I'm reminded of is that people outside of Florida have breathable summers. I'm walking around New York sometimes, especially in the evening, where I'm walking outside with my wife for like 30, 45 minutes and I'm not sweating. And I'm like, this is weird. I can't walk outside in Miami for 3 minutes in the summertime without having a drenched sweat.
I was sweating last night at a concert, bro.
Yes,
an open air concert last night. That there was rain and then there was wind, so it cooled down, and it was still hot and muggy when it's all said and done. I mean, we are a different breed down here. The humidity, bro, that we have down here is just
the humidity.
It's the humidity eats you up, and let me tell you, it gets hot in New York. Okay, so it's not like I'm not gonna say, oh, New York, it doesn't get. That's bull crap, dude. Go to Atlanta. Atlanta gets brutal too.
Yep.
Okay, we're not the only ones, but yeah, dude, our humidity is special.
Right.
Man, our humidity is special, dude. That is just absolutely nuts. One more thing before I let you go. There's a story now floating around. Do you believe Belichick could be on the hot seat in the next year or two? Because
I'll believe it when I see it, man.
Okay.
To me, Bill Belichick, we had this conversation, 2-3 months ago. It's crazy to look back in retrospect, but when the Heat were struggling and they were competing for this play-in spot, we were talking about all the Heat fans talking about, oh, well, maybe Pat Riley has overstayed his welcome and he's going to get out, right? And I was telling you, like, to me, Pat Riley, like Eric Spoelstra, like Greg Popovich, like Bill Belichick, are sort of these guys where they tell you when they're done. That's how I view it in this stage. Like,
I agree.
It's always a what have you done for me lately? Like I'm from a
football. But there's only one thing I disagree on the Belichick side. On all these other ones you mentioned, yes, I don't think him and Kraft get along.
That's possible. That's certainly possible.
And I think the Brady thing eats at Kraft to this day. That's why he was there in Tampa celebrating his championship. And that's why the relationship, Kraft always made sure Like I believe Spo and Wade have a really good relationship. I don't believe Riley and Wade will ever have a good relationship because, he went with Whiteside instead of Wade, and this is why Wade is kind of butthurt with all this kind of stuff. And he should be, by the way. He
Right.
should be. Okay. He deserves to feel slighted because he was more put it this way, he was way more loyal to the Heat than Riley was to Wade. Put it that way. Okay. Because even after getting dissed in Chicago, he's in Chicago telling Jimmy Butler, bro, Miami is the place for you.
Right.
Which there was no reason for him to do that whatsoever at that point. You got screwed by the Heat.
Yep.
So for me, my problem is I think there's real dislike there. And because you haven't made the playoffs, you haven't won in 4 years at all in the playoffs. I think if you have like another crap season, 5 or 6 wins, I think you come back the following year on a serious hot seat because you have to start looking at it that way if you're Kraft, and you don't have a lot of time left if you're Kraft.
Yeah.
So if you don't make the change now, then you'll never make the change. You're going to live with whenever the old man wants to step down. And what if he keeps having mediocre seasons? By the way, what was his record you told me? 79 and 87 without Brady, I believe you said. 76 and 80 something. He's got a losing record without Brady.
Yeah.
So
I see. Here's what I would say about that.
You don't think so?
I get it. He hasn't been as great without Brady, but he's won you 6 Super Bowl titles.
Yeah.
And as a man who grew up, I told you guys, I'm an Eagles fan growing up. The Eagles just saw their first Super Bowl 6 years ago, and so I always feel like they're sort of.
I wasn't a fan of the negativity towards Andy Reid. Never was.
Right. That's another thing, right? And he got fired because he couldn't win the big game. He kept getting them to the NFC Championship. And you ask Browns fans, they're going to be like, "I'd love to get to an AFC Championship. I'd build a coach's statue if they made 5 in AFC Championship games." But
Cam, as I've mentioned in this interview, I'm old.
Right.
This is what we used to say about Shula.
Yeah. And
he only wins 10 games now. Yep. He only gets to the first round. That's not enough. That's how freaking spoiled we were at that point. Like Shula's worst years were better than, for the next 25 years, better than most of the best years that other coaches could possibly have here. Those were Shula's worst years.
Right.
I mean, and it was so stupid the way we thought back then, because I was one of those idiots. I will never do that to Riley. I said that already. Riley can write his ticket whenever the hell he wants to go, dude. I'm never on that because I learned my lesson. What we did to Shula was uncalled for. It was disgusting. It was despicable what we did to Shula. That was wrong. So I get what you're saying. The loyalty factor. I get it.
And the grass is not always greener. Like sometimes, you think, okay, we fire Belichick. Oh, that gives us a better chance to win. Does it? Maybe your team is just, maybe it's just a team. It is what it is. Like maybe you go back
to being the Patriots that you were before.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe you go into a period where it's worse, and you're like, man, what I would give for a 10-7 season where I, lose in the divisional playoff round. Like some teams are wishing for that. I mentioned this on air this week. The Jets have not made the playoffs since 2010. That's the longest streak of any team in all 4 major sports.
That's why they're on Hard Knocks.
Right. And so, you know what Jets fans would love? I know they would love a Super Bowl, but you know what they would very minimally love? To make the playoffs.
Yes.
Some teams is just end the streak. Let us play games that matter in the playoffs. Yeah. That's it.
I'm with you. All right. What do you got going on at NFL Network, my friend?
Yeah, gearing up for training camp. So I did all week in GMFB, and so gonna spend some time with my family the next few days. Go out to LA. We're gonna have a work trip out there, nice. And then training camp is the following week, and so gearing up for the grind. The wait is almost over, folks.
You're gonna see any concerts while you're in LA? Because bro, there's always tons of concerts.
I don't think so. It's a short trip, about 2.5 days, and 2 of it is work. So I don't know how much I'll get to explore, but we'll see.
Okay. You know me, that's always a priority. I gotta squeeze in a show whenever I'm on the road. Follow him on Twitter at Cameron Wolfe and catch his work there at the NFL Network, and catch him twice a week here doing his thing with the KSDT CPA, Miami Dolphins and NFL Report. Cam, as always, thank you, my brother. Have a fantastic and blessed weekend.
All right, you too, man.
Thank you, sir. There you go. The great Cameron Wolfe.